Always interesting to hear other people's thoughts. Well, what I described to you is what I think it's looked at from a game design perspective. Not from I played the game and man, I really just wish I had this. I mean, your name is literally Spreadsheet Says No. So Spreadsheet is used by game developers because they can talk to somebody and somebody will say like, man, I'm just not interested in this. Okay, I understand that. But if there are 10,000 people that play it and you have a percentage of people, 5 or 6%, that say, I'm really not interested in this, but 94% seem to be okay with it, and by all indications, play the game and do the thing. You may not have had the personal conversation with people, but 96% of the player base didn't actively respond in the negative to a situation they were put in. In that case, spreadsheets, data, whatever, it gives you a lot of information. That's not to say that player experience doesn't matter, because it does. And even though the 94% of people might continue to play something and not give a shit, that doesn't mean that they enjoy it. It just means that it's tolerable for some percentage of them. 30, 40, 60, 80% of those people might think, it is what it is, and they play the game anyway, but they don't really like it. So sometimes you have to drill down further to get into the player experience to really discern what is going on that is not enjoyable, even though it's tolerable. How can we take it from tolerable to enjoyable or fun or whatever? And that's also part of game design. So there is definitely an over-reliance on data. Or there can be an over-reliance on data. That's definitely a thing that can happen. The feel of the game. Can you expound on that? One thing you'd say is the fast long-range torps are sometimes more useful than high-damage torps. Yeah, they're more consistent. Consistency is a wonderful thing. That's why, like, I don't like floaty shells. I like shells that actually hit what I shoot at. I prefer the consistency. The floaty shells could be more damaging. The Minotaur, for instance, is an extreme amount of damage output. I don't own the Minotaur because fuck floaty shells. So I'm willingly choosing to take less damage possibility with more consistency. And Holland can be the same way with people having extremely fast torps because they like hitting torps. And that does that. It hits torps better than other things that shoot slower torps, like black torps. I think are extremely powerful, but they only go like 40 knots or 42 knots or something. They go extremely slow. So good luck hitting them. They're more aerial denial than actual damage, unless you YOLO somebody. But what I was trying to describe is from a game design perspective of actually, there was a conversation on a forum. Forgive me, folks that are watching. I like talking as much as I like playing the game. So there's a little back and forth. There was a forum conversation that was talking about, the little white mouse thing happened. And then it's like, well, how could Wargaming fix it? Well, if Wargaming is going to put out the West Virginia 44 and we see what the Colorado is like, we see what the Oklahoma is like, well, wouldn't that mean that they're just going to put out a ship that sucks? And then people started going like, well, how could we buff these US ships and make them better? And how could we make it more fun and playable? So I looked at the Oklahoma, for instance. I looked at what the stats on the Oklahoma are. This, again, spreadsheet, data. And the Oklahoma sits like right in the middle of all the tier 5 battleships. There's certainly outliers. The Julio Cesare, whatever, is very high. There's another ship I think that's also fairly rare that's fairly high, and then they really just kind of like start to even out, right? So I mentioned, honestly, I'm a bit surprised at how consistent this is, but I remember like Little White Mouse put out a review X amount of years ago when the Oklahoma came out that the Oklahoma has good secondaries. So if you have good secondaries and you're going to have damage from secondaries, where do you have to get the damage from? You have to pull it out of the main guns. So, well, I don't like my main guns being 40-second reload. But you have secondaries. So if every ship has, an arbitrary, a tier 5 battleship's going to do 50 to 70,000 damage or 70 to 90,000 damage, the more you put here, the less you can put there. That's just the realistic of it. Well, I don't like ships that have bad guns. Understandable. But there are 10 or 15 different tier 5 ships you can choose from, and some of those have amazing guns but shitty secondaries. Some of them have shitty guns but amazing secondaries. And I realize you might have an attachment to the US line or to this name or to that name or something, but from a game perspective, you know, it's like you're picking your fighter in an old arcade game. You know, this guy is faster and has more health. This guy is slower and does more damage. You're picking the stats that you want, but there happens to be a ship and a name represented in the game that represents those stats. You're picking the stats. You're picking the class. So it might suck that the best guns happen to be. I'll make up something here. It may suck that the best guns are Russian, say. And I'm an American. I want to play American ships, and the American guns just aren't holding a candle to the Russian guns. Son of a bitch, I want good guns. Well, from a gameplay perspective, you have the option to have good guns if you chose to pick those. So it might suck that the thing that you personally identify doesn't give you the experience that you're looking for, but it doesn't mean that the experience isn't already in the game. And if you just make yet another battleship that has guns that are at the same spot, fuck. You think you played Oklahoma twice since you got her? Well, when I spoke up in the forum thread, I was told basically, get back in your lane. You're CV main, you have no fucking clue. So I took out the Oklahoma, and I'm 26th in North America now. So we played 30 games. I'm ranked on the fucking leaderboard. It could have been higher, I think, because I didn't realize I only needed 20 games to place, not 30. And I think the last few games drug the average down. But the Oklahoma is fine. It is what it is. It's okay. There's a way to play it because it's slow. It has secondaries, which mean that I could take a fight against a tier 7 or a tier 6 or even tier 7 battleship and still win. If I have IFHE secondaries, I can pen the fuck out of things. Like, it's more than just, well, the guns are 38 seconds and I don't like that. There's a whole package there. So, I don't know. Yay, soapbox. But it's worth understanding that regardless of names, regardless of, you know, fantasy and historical significance, World of Warships is not a historical representation game. World of Warships is a tabletop game. It's what it is. It's a tabletop game that's automated to be real time. So instead of you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, everybody moves their piece at the same time. It's a tabletop game. It's what it is. Which is fundamentally interesting, but it means that every piece has to have different stats, because if you took away all the names and stuff, you just have a little plastic figurine that looks like a battleship and a little plastic figurine that looks like a destroyer, and they run around doing stuff. And you use your imagination to pretendify as to what the hell it is. Kind of like with Dungeons & Dragons. Of course, this is my opinion, blah, blah, blah. But whatever. That was a lot of talking. But I found I did like the Oklahoma. It was enjoyable.